When we think about pollution, global warming and climate change, we often tend to picture smoke coming out of factories and vehicles. Or perhaps a sewer drain opening up in rivers, or maybe a beach full of human trash. But there is something much closer to our daily lives and habits that causes more harm to the environment, but remains hidden in plain sight. I'm talking about the clothes that we wear. Why am I saying this? Because the task of apparel production is both energy intensive and wasteful. The UN says the $3 trillion fashion industry consumes more energy than aviation and shipping combined. Moreover, the apparel industry generates 20% of the world's wastewater, which is responsible for 8 to 10% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions. The industry is also disproportionately wasteful. Estimates say that the value worth of $500 billion is lost every year due to clothing underutilization and lack of recycling. And this doesn't end here. Most of fashion's environmental impact comes from the use of raw materials, synthetic materials like polyester, which require an estimated 342 million barrels of oil every year. Clothes production processes such as dyeing requires more than 43 million tons of chemicals every year. But haven't clothes been a part of our lives ever since? What calls for this scrutiny as of now? The answer is consumerism. The UN says the fashion industry has seen a spectacular growth in the early 21st century. Between 2000 and 2014 alone, clothing production has doubled. The average consumer in 2015 bought 60% more pieces of garment when compared to some 15 years ago. And yet, each clothing item is now kept half as long. We're using more in less amount of time. Thus, the UN concludes that the industry has now entered the era of fast fashion. Let's explain what's fast fashion. Well, the term describes the quick turnover of fashion trends and the move towards cheaper, mass-produced clothing. This in addition to new lines of clothing being constantly released. So what's wrong with keeping your wardrobe up to date with the latest trends? Well, to answer this, let's get things in perspective. The production of one new t-shirt, I repeat, one new t-shirt on an average consumes about 2,700 liters of water. The same for producing a new pair of jeans is more than 10,000 liters of water. Even a pair of cotton socks consumes about 600 liters of water. Think about all those pairs lying in your closet forgotten. To address these environmental concerns, many fashion companies have launched eco-collections, simply put, eco-friendly collections. Companies claim these products are made from organic and recycled materials. But these claims are not unchallenged. The UK government has launched a probe in these claims of 3 companies in July. Moreover, critics say that these so-called eco-collections do not address the issue of overconsumption. So what can we do at an individual level to address these concerns? For one, we can curb our consumption. Shop from your wardrobe, they say. The UN, through its Act Now campaign, advises you to consider whether you really need new clothes before buying them. It instead advises consumers not to buy new clothes if they are not going to be worn for a minimum of 30 times. It is also advisable to wash clothes less frequently and adopt methods like spot cleaning and reduce wasting water. The UN further asks you to donate your unwanted clothes to charity organizations. This in addition to opting for recyclable options, reworking old fabrics, and so on. Now, all these suggestions look great on paper, but let's actually get insights from somebody within the fashion industry to see what's happening on ground. We are now being joined by fashion designer Reena Dhaka from New Delhi. Reena, welcome to WION World as one.
Thank you.
Now, my first question, the argument against sustainable clothing or slow fashion has always been it's more expensive to produce and buy. As a designer, how do you meet the consumer midway? Will high prices stop consumers from investing in slow fashion?
It's not true. Thanks to the awareness, even what you said today itself makes one person realize that these are achievable targets. One can buy a product and wear it 30 times. And thank you, I also learned that. And So today, yes, there are ways where we are recycling the fabrics. Certain brands have become huge in the world, like Marina Sere, because what they are doing is picking up old stocks, leftovers, and then either they're dyeing and recutting them, or some of them are going a step ahead and recreating a yarn and reweaving it. Those we called recycling. Also, I feel as designers, what is an achievable recycling is there are many clothes in our closets which we don't wear.
Right.
Maybe we can recut, rewear them. Or in India, if you go back into our simpler days, the best systems were there wherein saris were worn. And post that, when the sari got too old, we patched it or turned it into a quilt or some kind of a, cushion cover or something. Those systems I thought were perfect. Also, a sari doesn't involve cutting, so there is no wastage in it. Why it is slow fashion is more expensive is like I went to Kota and done work with them. The weavers use a very organic kind of a method to make those Kota saris. But a single person creates this much fabric organically by the end of 3 days. So the cost increases because his labor and time increases. And as such, yes, there are those who are very much fond of slow fashion and will pay that extra bit for it. Now, in paper and stationery also, we have a new kind of paper which, when dissolves, turns into a plant or a seed
Reena,
or something.
if I may just come in there and talk about fast fashion. We've seen fast fashion brands, without naming them, hop on to the sustainability campaign without naming any of these brands. Do you see a movement towards slow fashion, especially in markets in South Asia, especially at a time when trends are changing weekly?
Yes, amongst the very fashionable, yes, it's very much they're very aware, and they are very much making a move towards that world. In India, we have khadi, as you know. There has been a lot of push towards making khadi this fabric of sustainability because A, it uses very little water. And two, it gets better with each use. It doesn't use bleach. Again, that, the reason why you use a lot of water, because bleach is put in water and then fabrics are dissolved in it. So we have had our government of India, or governments of India even in the past, really go ahead and push and make the younger generation aware of khadi and its merits, especially as we move towards sustainability. On my part, I feel, especially in men, you have so many shirts they don't wear, but they buy consistently. If that can be reconverted by designers as a trend to rewear them by the women in their households and generations and younger generations, it's a very doable idea and one can do it. But since you're a larger platform and you are talking of mega companies, the biggest of brands all over the world, whether it's a Zara or a Gap or those the mega brands, they buy out of India and China.
Right.
The
That's
design
exactly
which
what I was
developed,
referring to, yes.
Yeah, the design which is developed, because we've been exporters and we work with these brands, all require a certain format wherein a pattern is cut in layers over the mountains of cloth. And those put aside selvages, the wastage. Now, daily out of a factory, hundreds or thousands of kilos of that fabric is thrown. Or sometimes they sell it for like up to 3 rupees a kg. If you go to in Delhi's old Delhi, where the Gandhinagar side, we now have a landfill mountains, not one. We have more than one mountain of these katrans and the
byproduct wastage is something that you've thrown light on, which is also something we've been addressing. Just a final question there very quickly. How can a designer who focuses on sustainable or slow fashion appeal to a wider audience? I think that's a big challenge. Perhaps younger generations, Gen Z as we call them, they choose fast fashion often over long-term investments. Trends are also changing before we can sneeze. So how do you react to that?
I think the most important part is to not waste the sites or the selvages, to try and formulate a pattern where that gets used. And then in itself, you're reducing the fiber wastage into the earth back. The other thing is for clients to realize that we are happy and willing as designers to refashion the old products, whether they are ours or others, at a price, and so they can reuse it. Third, I would say is, as I said, I want to do a line of older, leftover shirts and I make it contemporary and I sell it. The harder part is to reconvert the ones lying in the landfills as yarn, reweave it or refashion it. That's still more challenging. And as designers, as people, I'm going myself into a fashion week, we have used a small degree of recyclable products, but not completely.
Right.
But yes, going forward into fall and in winter, patchwork, these kind of trends need to emerge, and people need to start wearing them in weddings, and refashioning needs to become a mantra.
Right, Reena, thank you so much for all those inputs, and thanks for joining us on WION's Climate Tracker.
Thank you.
WION World is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.